The morning sunlight filtered through the half-open blinds, scattering golden stripes across the marble countertop. Emma moved slowly, almost mechanically, flipping pancakes while the faint aroma of coffee curled into the quiet kitchen. Everything seemed ordinary, too ordinary perhaps. She hummed softly, a tune she couldn't quite place, hoping it would drown out the unease prickling at her chest. Daniel had already left the bedroom, leaving the faint trace of his cologne lingering in the air. She noticed it immediately. The scent was strong, almost overpowering, as if it were meant to assert his presence even in his absence. Emma shook her head, dismissing the thought. Maybe she was imagining things. Maybe it was just Monday. As she arranged the pancakes on plates, she recalled last night's dinner. The way Daniel had tilted his head, smiling, yet his eyes had seemed distant, calculating. "You're overthinking," he had said when she asked if he seemed different, but his casual denial only deepened her suspicion. Emma stirred her coffee, watching the swirling brown spiral dissolve into itself. There was a rhythm to it, hypnotic, like a warning she didn't yet understand. The quiet was broken by the sound of Daniel's footsteps approaching the kitchen. He leaned against the doorway, arms crossed, a faint smirk playing at the corner of his lips. "Morning," he said. Voice smooth, almost too practiced. "Morning," Emma replied, forcing a lightness into her tone that she didn't feel. He glanced at the pancakes. "You made these yourself?" "Of course," she said, trying to sound casual. "I thought we could have breakfast before work." He nodded, though his gaze lingered on her just a moment too long. Something in it, an unreadable calculation, made her shiver. She turned to the window, pretending to admire the blooming garden outside, while a sense of tension coiled tighter in her chest. The house, bright and warm in sunlight, now felt like a stage. Every smile, every movement seemed rehearsed, masking an unseen darkness. Emma sighed quietly, reaching for her fork, the clink against the plate echoing in the stillness. She wanted to trust the life they had built, but deep inside, a whisper insisted that Daniel was not the man she thought she knew. That suspicion, fragile and tentative, would not leave her alone. As she took her first bite, the sunlight shifted, casting a long shadow across the floor, stretching toward the doorway where Daniel stood. And in that shadow, Emma felt the first hint of a truth she wasn't ready to confront. Something about this marriage was off, though she didn't yet know why. The storm had rolled in by late afternoon, and rain tapped against the windows in a steady, insistent rhythm. Emma sat curled on the edge of the sofa, arms wrapped around her knees, the dim glow of the living room lamp casting long shadows across the walls. She had tried to focus on a book, but her mind kept circling back to Daniel, his words, his gestures, the faint sense of calculation she couldn't yet name. The argument had started over something trivial, the way he left dishes in the sink, or the angle at which she stacked the towels. But it escalated quickly, as if his need for control was a current pulling them both under. "Why do you always do things your way?" Daniel had snapped, voice tight. "You think I don't notice?" "I'm not trying to upset you," Emma had said, her voice trembling slightly, though she forced calm. I just wanted to help." "Help?" He had laughed, a sharp, cold sound that made her flinch. "You call this helping?" His eyes flicked toward the countertop, scanning as though measuring her, judging her. Emma's stomach twisted. She had loved this man, trusted him without question. But now every interaction felt like a test she could never pass. The words he had dismissed so casually, the subtle digs, the sharp edges hidden beneath smiles, all of it began to feel like manipulation, a quiet erosion of her confidence. Later, she found herself alone in their bedroom, Daniel at work. Her phone buzzed, a message from an unknown number. Curious, she opened it and froze. The message referenced details about Daniel's day that didn't match what he had told her. Then another appeared, cryptic but insistent. "He isn't who he says he is. Watch carefully." Her hands shook as she scrolled through past texts, piecing together inconsistencies in his stories. Times, names, small details he had casually mentioned. They didn't add up. A knot of fear and betrayal twisted in her chest. She had tried to ignore the unease in Chapter 1, chalked it up to imagination. But now, she could no longer deny that something was deeply wrong. The rain intensified, lashing against the windows as thunder rumbled overhead. Shadows in the corners of the room seemed to deepen, filling the space with a tangible tension. Emma felt trapped between love and suspicion, unsure whether to confront Daniel immediately or wait, to gather evidence, to make sense of the pattern emerging before her. When Daniel finally returned, he smiled, charming, practiced, but Emma noticed it didn't reach his eyes. "Storm got worse, huh?" he said lightly, setting down his briefcase. "Yes," she replied, voice steadier than she felt. "It's dark tonight." He glanced at her, eyebrow raised, and for a moment the air between them was electric, charged with unspoken truths. Emma looked away, heart pounding. She didn't know what she had just discovered, but she understood this. The cracks in their marriage were no longer invisible. And the storm outside mirrored the one growing inside her. Emma had spent the afternoon in the quiet of the study, the storm finally retreating to a distant drizzle. Her eyes, drawn to the desk where Daniel often left his papers, noticed a small, leather-bound box she had never seen before. Curiosity and dread warred inside her as she opened it, revealing a collection of old letters, photographs, and folded newspaper clippings. The first photograph made her stomach tighten. A woman with dark curly hair smiled at the camera, her eyes bright but carrying a shadowed sadness. Emma knew immediately this was not someone from their current life, someone Daniel had never mentioned. She flipped through more images, dinners, trips, candid shots where Daniel's arm rested possessively around her. Yet the woman's presence was unmistakable. A letter, yellowed with age, slipped from between the photos. Emma unfolded it carefully. The words were intimate, almost confessional. "I can't stop thinking about us even when I know I shouldn't. Every secret I keep feels heavier than the last. You promised me a future, yet it feels like a lie. Do you even remember me?" Emma's hands trembled as she held the paper, the weight of Daniel's hidden life pressing down on her. She read another letter, this one harsher. "If anyone knew, everything would fall apart. I trust you, but I am beginning to doubt myself. You are not the man I thought you were." Memories of small inconsistencies she had ignored flooded back. Times he had been unreachable. Trips he refused to discuss. Excuses that never fully satisfied her curiosity. And now the evidence lay bare before her, silent but accusatory. Her mind raced as she realized she was not alone in the unfolding story. A shadow of someone watching from the past, a family friend who had always hovered around Daniel, smiling too broadly, asking too many questions. And the woman in the photographs, the ex-lover, whose absence was itself a clue. Emma understood for the first time that Daniel's life had been carefully edited, chapters deleted or rewritten, secrets buried beneath charm and routine. She set the letters aside and looked around the dimly lit study. Dust motes danced in the soft afternoon light, shadows pooling in corners as if hiding the whispers of the past. Her pulse quickened. She needed to confront this, to demand answers, but fear held her back. As she returned the letters to the box, a thought nagged relentlessly. These ghosts weren't gone. They were part of Daniel's present too, and Emma could no longer ignore their presence. She realized that understanding his past was not just curiosity, it was survival. The study felt colder now, and when Daniel walked in, humming a tune he thought she didn't recognize, Emma stiffened. She clutched the photograph in her hand, hiding it from view. She didn't know how much he had remembered or how much he had planned, but one thing was certain. The past was no longer buried, and it was creeping inexorably into their home. The night had settled in, thick and heavy, with the storm returning in violent bursts of wind and rain that rattled the windows. Emma was in the living room, still clutching the photograph she had hidden from Daniel, when she noticed the envelope pushed just under the front door. Its stark white surface seemed almost luminescent against the dark hardwood floor. Her heart quickened. She knelt to pick it up, her fingers trembling as she broke the seal. The message inside was brief, yet it struck like a blade. "You don't know who you married." Emma froze, staring at the words. The room seemed to darken as thunder rumbled overhead. She could hear her own pulse in her ears, pounding with a mix of fear and disbelief. Her hands shook violently, crumpling the letter slightly. The calm she had tried to maintain in the previous days, through the study, the photographs, and the letters, was gone. Now, uncertainty and dread took its place. When Daniel walked in moments later, humming casually, Emma nearly dropped the note. She pressed it behind her back, hoping he hadn't noticed. "Emma? What are you doing?" he asked, raising an eyebrow. I found a letter," she said, voice quivering, finally pulling it out. Someone slipped it under the door. "Look at this." She handed it to him, her eyes searching his for the reaction she feared most. Daniel scanned the note quickly, and then, smile, almost imperceptible, he handed it back. "It's probably a prank. Some neighbor trying to scare you," he said lightly. "Don't let it get to you." Emma's stomach churned. "But it says—" "You don't know who you married." "Who would—" Daniel interrupted, placing a hand over hers, gentle but firm. "Emma, look at me. You're imagining things. You've been stressed, overthinking everything. This is nothing. Trust me," she wanted to believe him. She wanted to cling to the familiarity of the man she thought she knew. But the photograph, the letters, the inconsistencies, they all screamed otherwise. The rain intensified outside, battering the windows with relentless force, and the living room shadows seemed to stretch, moving with the flicker of the lightning. Emma felt as if the house itself had turned against her, every creak and whisper magnifying her unease. She sank into the couch, gripping the letter tightly, her knuckles white. Daniel sat beside her, still smiling, his presence simultaneously comforting and suffocating. He leaned close, whispering reassurances that sounded hollow, like echoes in a cavern. Emma stared at the floor, imagining 1,000 possibilities, some harmless, some horrifying. She realized with a sinking clarity that her instincts had been right all along. The danger wasn't just in the past, hidden letters or photographs. It was here, in the present, inside the man she had married. And now someone or something was warning her. The night air was thick and damp, carrying the lingering scent of rain and wet asphalt. Emma stood at the window, tracing the streaks of water with her finger, when she noticed movement in the yard. A shadowy figure lingered near the edge of the garden, indistinct in the dim glow of the porch light. Her breath caught in her throat. She pressed herself against the glass, heart hammering. The figure didn't move closer, didn't retreat, simply watched, silent and patient. Emma's mind raced. Who could it be? A neighbor? A prankster emboldened by the storm? Or was it someone connected to Daniel's past? The ex-lover, the mysterious letters, the hidden photographs. By the time Daniel returned from checking the perimeter, Emma was pale, trembling. "There's someone outside," she whispered, voice tight with panic. Daniel's brow furrowed, but his response was calm, almost rehearsed. "What do you mean?" "Who? There. By the fence." She pointed shakily toward the garden. He followed her gaze and shook his head. "Emma, there's nothing there. You've been on edge ever since that letter. Maybe it's just a trick of the light." But Emma couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Shadows seemed to flicker and stretch in unnatural ways, the wind rustling the trees like whispered warnings. She stepped back, backing away from the window, a chill crawling up her spine. The following day, she decided to call Detective Harris, a family friend and retired investigator. She needed answers, someone neutral who could make sense of the unease that had begun to dominate her life. When he arrived, his presence was calm but authoritative, a stark contrast to the storm of fear swirling inside her. "Tell me everything from the beginning," Harris said, settling into the chair opposite her. His eyes were sharp, scanning not only her words but her expressions. Reading between the lines, Emma recounted the letters, the photographs, Daniel's inconsistencies, and the shadowy figure in the yard. She tried to steady her voice, but her hands trembled as she gestured toward the window. Harris listened intently, jotting notes in a leather-bound pad. "You've been noticing patterns," he said thoughtfully. "Small inconsistencies can point to larger truths. We need to verify everything carefully. If someone is watching you, or if Daniel is hiding something, you'll want clear evidence before you confront it." Emma nodded, a mixture of relief and dread washing over her. She realized that the world she had trusted, the house, the marriage, the life she thought she knew, was far less safe than she had imagined. That night, the dim streets outside their home seemed to thrum with danger. Flickering streetlights cast fractured shadows along the pavement, and the wind whispered through the trees like a chorus of unseen eyes. Emma lay awake, heart racing, listening for footsteps that might never come, or that might already be there. Just out of reach, she understood something fundamental. The stranger in the shadows was only the beginning, and Detective Harris, with his calm but probing presence, would be her guide through the web of deception slowly unraveling around her. The bedroom was dim, lit only by a single bedside lamp casting long, jagged shadows across the walls. Emma stood near the doorway, arms crossed tightly over her chest, eyes fixed on Daniel as he paced back and forth. The air was heavy, oppressive, thick with the unspoken weight of secrets long buried. "I can't keep doing this," Emma said, voice trembling despite her efforts to stay firm. "I see the lies, Daniel. I see the inconsistencies, the hidden letters, the messages. Everything. You can't pretend I don't know." Daniel stopped, turning slowly to face her. His expression was calm, almost serene, but the intensity in his eyes cut through her like a knife. "You want the truth?" he asked, voice low, measured. "Fine, you'll get it. But be careful what you wish for." He sank onto the edge of the bed, leaning forward, and began to reveal pieces of a past Emma had never imagined. Names she had never heard, marriages she had never known, financial dealings that skirted legality but always seemed just out of reach. Every confession was a new fracture in the foundation she had believed unshakable. Emma felt her stomach twist, a blend of disbelief and betrayal. Her mind raced, trying to reconcile the charming, familiar man she married with the complex web of deceit he was unveiling. How could you hide this from me?" she whispered, almost to herself. Daniel's eyes softened slightly, but his voice remained steady. "Because I wanted to protect you. I wanted to create a life we could call our own. But the past doesn't stay buried, Emma. It finds a way." She sank onto a chair near the window, the shadows from the lamp stretching across her face like dark fingers. The room seemed to shrink around her, every movement of Daniel exaggerated in the low light. Emma's hands shook as she tried to process the magnitude of his confessions. "You can't just drop this on me," she said finally, voice rising. "I need to understand why all of it. And you expect me to just accept it?" He leaned back, meeting her gaze directly. "I don't expect you to accept it. I expect you to see me as I am, not as the version you imagined. You married a man with a past, Emma, not a storybook husband, not the perfect man. Just me." The words hung in the room, heavy and suffocating. Emma's heart pounded, her trust shattered, yet a strange clarity emerged. The power dynamic between them was no longer hidden. Daniel's control had been subtle, but now it was visible, raw, undeniable. She looked at him, fear and love tangled together, realizing that the marriage she thought she understood was a battlefield. And tonight, in the dark, she had glimpsed the true scope of the war she had unknowingly entered. Emma moved through the house like a ghost, her footsteps muffled against the worn carpet. Each room she passed seemed smaller, walls leaning in as though the house itself were conspiring to trap her. The letters, the photographs, Daniel's confessions, they all weighed heavily, pressing her chest until it felt impossible to breathe. She loved him, yet she feared him. She feared the man she had married, the man she now realized she didn't fully know. Her hands fidgeted with a loose thread on the sofa, and she paced back and forth, circling the living room like a predator stalking her own mind. Shadows stretched across the furniture, distorted and unsettling in the dim evening light. The storm outside, lingering from earlier days, added a rhythmic thrum against the windows, punctuating her anxiety with each gust of wind. Her phone buzzed, breaking the oppressive silence. A message from Claire, her closest friend since college. "I'm coming over. We need to talk." Relief washed over Emma, but it was tangled with guilt. She didn't want Daniel to think she was confiding in someone else, yet she couldn't face this alone. When Claire arrived, her presence was a sharp contrast to the suffocating gloom. Bright, practical, and no nonsense, she stepped inside without waiting for an invitation. "Emma, you look like hell," she said bluntly, scanning the room. "What's going on? Can't keep hiding like this." Emma sank onto the couch, burying her face in her hands. "It's Daniel," she whispered. Everything I thought I knew about him, it's a lie. The letters, the photos, the confessions. I don't know who he really is anymore. I don't know if I can trust anything he says." Claire sat beside her, placing a firm hand on her shoulder. Emma, listen to me. You're being manipulated. He's gaslighting you, making you doubt your instincts, your perceptions. You've always trusted him, but he's playing a game and you're not supposed to see it. Emma shook her head, tears spilling freely. I love him, Claire. I can't just stop loving him. But I'm terrified. Everything is twisting inside my head. I don't know which way is safe. Claire's gaze hardened, unwavering. Love doesn't mean blind obedience. You're allowed to see the truth, Emma. You're allowed to protect yourself. Don't let fear or guilt stop you from noticing what's happening. The living room seemed to close in around Emma as she absorbed Claire's words. The shadows deepened in the corners, and the flickering light from the lamp made familiar objects seem alien, threatening. Her hands tightened into fists as realization settled in. The man she had married, the life she had trusted, was a maze of control, deceit, and power she hadn't anticipated. She looked at Claire, gratitude mingled with fear, and whispered, I don't know if I can face him anymore, but I know I have to. Outside, the storm raged on, wind bending the trees, lightning illuminating the house in brief, brilliant flashes. Inside, Emma felt the first stirrings of resolve amid the terror, a fragile, yet undeniable determination to confront the truth. Emma's hands trembled as she moved through the house, retracing the paths she had walked countless times but now seeing them with different eyes. Every familiar corner seemed to conceal something sinister, every closet a potential hiding place for secrets Daniel had meticulously buried. The photograph from the previous chapters burned in her mind, urging her to explore further, to uncover what had been kept from her. She started in the study, rifling through drawers, her fingers brushing against thick files she had never noticed before. Beneath the neatly stacked papers, she found folders labeled with cryptic codes, dates, and names that didn't ring any bells. As she flipped through them, a pattern emerged. Transfers of money to unknown accounts, falsified documents, identity changes. Everything pointing to someone living a life beneath another name. A chill ran down her spine. Daniel had constructed a web far more dangerous than she had imagined. Driven by a mix of fear and determination, Emma explored the basement, the air thick with dust and the scent of damp wood. At the far wall, she noticed a faint outline, almost imperceptible in the low light. Pressing against it, a hidden latch clicked. Heart pounding, she opened a concealed door to reveal a small room filled with stacks of papers, boxes of photographs, and personal effects that seemed oddly familiar. Trinkets, letters, and mementos connected to people she had never met. Her pulse raced as she realized the scope of what Daniel had hidden. Each object was a fragment of deception, evidence of lives he had touched, manipulated, or betrayed. She stumbled backward, bumping into a dusty table, sending papers fluttering to the floor. The room smelled of old paper, mildew, and something else she couldn't name, something that made her stomach turn. When Daniel appeared at the basement door, his expression calm, almost expectant, Emma's voice cracked. What is all this? Who are these people? What have you done? He stepped fully into the room, hands raised slightly in a gesture of feigned innocence. Emma, it's not what it looks like. You're letting fear run ahead of you. There's nothing criminal here, nothing you need to worry about. But the files, the hidden room, the evidence sprawled across the floor, screamed otherwise. Don't lie to me, she shouted, her voice echoing off the stone walls. I know you've been hiding things, everything. How many lies, Daniel? How many lives have you destroyed? He sighed softly, almost pityingly, and shook his head. You're seeing it as chaos because you've never understood the way I operate. It's not destruction, Emma, it's control. Everything I do, I control. The basement seemed to shrink around her as the truth settled like a weight on her shoulders. Daniel's charm, his manipulations, his carefully crafted persona, all were now laid bare. The man she had trusted, loved, and feared was a master of deception, and the house itself seemed to pulse with the remnants of his secrets, silent witnesses to the unraveling of a life she had once thought safe. Emma stood in the hidden room, heart racing, eyes wide, realizing that the path forward would be perilous. She had glimpsed the full extent of Daniel's darkness, and there was no turning back. The night was heavy and silent, broken only by the occasional rustle of leaves outside and the distant hum of streetlights. Emma moved carefully through the house, clutching her notebook and a small digital recorder. Each step was deliberate, her heart hammering against her ribs. She could feel the weight of the hidden room's revelations pressing down on her, urging her to act, to document everything before the opportunity vanished. She sat at the dining table, lamp casting a small circle of light in the otherwise dark room. Pen scratched across paper as she recorded the names, the dates, the transfers, the falsified documents, all of Daniel's lies and crimes. Her hands shook, but determination steadied her resolve. This was no longer about fear. It was about survival, about reclaiming control from the man who had meticulously stripped it from her. A sudden creak of the floorboard made her freeze. Daniel appeared in the doorway, silhouette outlined by the dim hallway light. He smiled, casual, unnervingly calm. "Working late?" he asked, voice smooth, almost teasing. Emma didn't look up. "Yes, I'm making sure everything is in order," she said, deliberately vague, her tone neutral but firm. He stepped closer, shadows stretching behind him. "Emma, you don't need to do this. You're letting paranoia guide you. We're fine. Aren't we? Fine?" she whispered, finally meeting his gaze. "After everything I've found? After the lies, the hidden rooms, the people you've manipulated? I don't think fine is possible." His smile didn't falter. "You're overreacting. You always have," he said, voice cold but charming, the contrast sending a chill through her. "You need to relax. Let me handle it." "You'll see, it's all under control." Emma's stomach twisted. The man she loved, the man she feared, was utterly unapologetic. His control, his manipulation was precise, calculated, and terrifyingly calm. She realized then that she couldn't rely on him to change, to admit guilt, or to stop. Only she could take action. Gathering her courage, Emma packed the notebook and recorder into her bag, moving quickly but quietly through the house. Shadows stretched across the walls, distorted by the flickering lamp, giving the sense that the entire house was alive, watching her every move. Her pulse raced as she slipped out the back door, stepping into the damp night. Rain from an earlier storm left the grass slick beneath her feet, reflecting the scattered streetlights like fractured mirrors. Every breath felt urgent, every heartbeat a warning. Emma knew the next hours would be critical, one misstep, and Daniel would regain the upper hand. But for the first time in months, she felt a flicker of power, a sense that she could reclaim her life. The truth was hers, and with it the chance for justice. Tonight she would no longer be a pawn. Tonight the breaking point had arrived.